growing up, I had a twin brother named David, and he and I were kind of the only black students that we saw.
During my elementary years, there were very few black people. I think you can actually count the bulk of them on your hands, and lucky if you need both.
Yeah, there was like 3 of us. Me, my friend Vernell, I remember a guy named Leiden, and then the assumption was always that I had to date this other black person in the school because there's only 3 of us, so it's like, okay, well, you guys must all be together, right?
Initially, I went to Forest Heights, which is the German elementary, and I honestly don't recall any black students or classmates.
I have 2 older sisters, so there was us and maybe 2 other families that were there. I've only ever experienced 1 other black kid in my class for about 2 years, and that was 7 and 8, and then he left.
And then when I was in grade 4, I switched to a francophone school. And I recall having classmates who were black, but not until I was probably in junior high. And but at that point, it was quite a minority, and only like people who had recently immigrated.
In elementary, it was just us and 1 other girl. In junior high school, it was maybe 10% of our grade 9 graduating class that was black.
In junior high, you start to see more black kids. What's interesting is they weren't all Caribbean anymore. Now you're starting to see Nigerians and stuff like that. So I'm actually learning more about black people from running into other black people from other black places. Whereas prior, I would know a lot about Jamaica and the Caribbean because that's my family associated with Caribbeans. We were brought around Caribbeans. So that was black to us.
Very few, very far between, which is interesting though. My brothers were so I'm the youngest one, and so they were in school a couple of years before me, and they actually had more black students in their cohort than I did, which I didn't understand.
And then in high school, again, a very small number of us, maybe 4 or 5, that graduated altogether.
Junior high, however, was a whole new world of blackness. Because I think at the time there was a lot of segregation, whether it was self-imposed or a result of the way the chemistry of the school worked. We had an area in high school, called the Black Hall, and there must have been a good handful of us, so maybe 20 or so black kids, but it was a big jump in terms of numbers from the black people who I went to school with in elementary and junior high.
Even in high school, I would say it was pretty similar. Like most of first of all, the number of black kids that you would go to school with, like I think it'd be like maybe 2 or 3 per grade. And it was mostly people who had like very recently immigrated to Canada.
I see many black students. I look around and I see many times like half the class or so is black. And many people who look like me, whether they're from Africa or from Caribbean heritage, I do see many black students.
It's amazing to see how many black students there are in our schools now, and being able to be witness to, you know, half of our students being from a certain country in Africa or from the Caribbean is so neat, because we see them forming relationships with one another. And growing up, I had a built-in someone, but now they have built-in someones. They have people from their countries, their nations, speaking the same languages, eating the same foods, so they're relating to each other on a much greater level, and there's a lot less fear in being yourself. I find in the classroom now there's a lot less fear in, you know, bringing out your fufu for lunch or having some plantain as a snack. The kids see it and they know it. You don't have to explain it that, well, this is how my mom makes it. Kids see and know, and they share. They share their stories. They share their experiences. So it's much more comfortable today to be a black student in Canada.
But now, again, my daughter who is in elementary school, there's so many, and so many, like even in our neighborhood, there's many Africans who have come, again, as landed immigrants and different things like that. Because we're in like a hoity-toity neighborhood, so you'd think, oh, who are the people that are coming? And so many of them are those educated immigrants who have landed, doctors and dentists and stuff, and their students, their children who are now students at the school. It's very different than what it looked like when I was younger.
So how many African teachers, professors, and so forth were there in Edmonton in the 1980s? You know, I wish I knew. What I can tell you is that as somebody who went to school in the Catholic school system, the answer appeared to be one. And I had one, actually, I never even got this teacher. He was at the elementary junior high that I attended, which was Mount Carmel, and I never got to have him as a teacher. And you know, in high school, my high school had no African teachers, and in fact, I believe all of the teachers were Euro-Canadians. I don't think there's any exception to that. I don't know if that's improved in the Catholic system, but the public system wasn't much better.
My first time I ever had a black teacher was in 9th grade. I've only ever had one black teacher. It was so funny. It was like a white woman's supermarket. Those were the only teachers I had.
Growing up, I didn't really have that many black teachers, principals, etc. But going to the school, our staff members were very diverse. We had many people of Asian heritage, Latin heritage, but not very many black teachers or authority figures there.
When I was in grade 4, I moved to a Francophone school and did Francophone schooling right up until grade 12. And actually, I don't really recall ever having a black teacher. And then after grade 12, I went straight to university, and my first degree was in psychology. And even in that time, I don't remember having a black teacher or instructor.
One, and he left when I was going into it was grade 5. He was a Miles, or Mr. Miles, so like they're a famous Edmonton black family. I was so excited for him to be my teacher, and he left, retired, or went somewhere else or whatever the year that I went to grade 5. So like honestly, that's the only one that I can think of in elementary school, in junior high school, and in high school. I went to Catholic schools. I don't know if that made a difference.
I don't think I ever had a black teacher when I was coming up, no.
In elementary school, I had no black educators. In junior high school, I had none as well. I did have a Filipino Vietnamese teacher. He was the one and only in junior high. And in high school, again, I had no black educators. When I got to Grant MacEwan and the U of A, also had no black professors there.
I've gone to school here since elementary school, through the Catholic school system. And I can recall maybe one black substitute teacher that I had on maybe, would have been, saw 2 times within my whole education career. And that's from elementary school, junior high school, to high school.
I had one black teacher in grade 6, and she was fun. She reminded me of home, you know, things she would say, her demeanor, her toughness, her expectations of her class, and I always thrived in that sort of environment, so I definitely really enjoyed that opportunity with her.
Growing up and going to school through the elementary years, and I went to 3 different elementary schools, 3 different junior high schools, and one high school. So in that time, I can recall 2 black teachers, and those black teachers were in the later years. My elementary years, I actually don't remember a single black teacher, and keep in mind again, I went to 3 different elementaries. My junior high years, yes, there was one light-skinned black teacher, and then in high school is where I probably would have seen the next one.
I want to be absolutely clear about this. The United States and Canada are not identical societies, so what happens in one cannot guarantee you what's going to happen in the other, but there are some similarities. And there are studies from the United States that demonstrate that, and I think this study must have focused on grade 4, but basically, if an African-American child had an African teacher, it was either in or by grade 4, then his chances of dropping out decreased by 30%. And if you think of like, is there an app, a pill, a special program, you know, some type of super patty that you could eat that would make you not drop out of school and had 30% success ratio. You'd get $1 billion contract, right? And it turns out that you don't need those. I mean, like everyone, I would love a super patty, okay? However, you can't get those things, but what you can do is you can hire African teachers.
In 9th grade, I got my first black teacher. His name's Mr. Edwards. He's awesome. He's the most scariest dude you'll ever meet, but he's like a big teddy bear. I love him so much.
I recently completed my master's in social work, and throughout that program, I didn't have any black instructors, but I was really lucky that my practicum supervisor actually was black and of African descent, and that really actually made a really big difference on just my experience completing my practicum and the influence that she was able to have, and the relational aspect was really big, and just having kind of a leader who was black. And actually after that experience, I kind of, in my own professional practice, I've been really intentional about seeking out leaders and mentors who are black, just because it really is different.
So now my daughter is in elementary school. Teachers, still not very much, but there's so many black students. I'm always amazed when I go into that school. I'm like, where did all these kids come from? This is not what it looked like when I was growing up at all. There's so many now. But there's been funny comments. I've heard interesting comments. It's a French immersion school. And so there's actually a lot of French immersion teachers, say from Senegal and different, say Côte d'Ivoire, different French-speaking African nations, where it's like, okay, those people exist, but they don't necessarily, they don't fit with the values of the school. And yeah, I heard that comment once and was pretty peeved, because I thought that's an opportunity for people who look like my kid to be teaching my kid in terms of education. And in terms of representation in education here in Edmonton, it's so small. But now I do know a few black teachers. I know probably like at least 5. And now they have an association. Shout out to Sarah Adomako-Ansa, who is also our lead tutor at CASH, who started the Black Teachers Association, along with Andrew Parker, who's another awesome black teacher. They're all doing big things and wonderful things, and they're all getting together, showing their faces and showing that black teachers make a difference for black students' lives.
Currently, I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know there has been an influx of black teachers in Edmonton. Not as much as we'd like to see, but.
So when you know you have a black principal in a school, then we know very well, and having gone through all these programs we are talking about, then we've seen huge impact when it even comes to the programming in the schools, the support between the schools and the community, right? The support between the schools and the parents, so that has really helped a lot. If you think about, again, these individuals in institutions of higher learning, again, with positions of influence, like professors, chairs of department, deans, again, that has a huge impact in terms of sometimes hiring, who gets research, who they get to support. And more important, I know, particularly in post-secondary institutions, I know so many of them, these black colleagues, who have introduced incredible scholarship on matters pertaining to equity and black identity, even if it's not black identity, but in terms of racialized communities in their own disciplines. Some of them have gone ahead and started programs.